So this is kind of almost like a vendor panel. We have VMware, then Microsoft touting their kind of cloud acumen, and now I'm coming in talking about OpenStack, which is an open source emerging standard and open source cloud orchestration. So how many of you have heard of OpenStack, just by the raise of hands? OK, so it's not everybody, but it's a good number of people. I wanted to start by just sharing what OpenStack is. I think that there is a lot of misconceptions in the market about what it is, and there is a lot of hype comparing OpenStack to things like Azure or things like VMware, saying OpenStack is better, VMware is better, etc. I think it's important to understand that OpenStack is not exactly a product. OpenStack really is an open source community that is focused on basically building a cloud software platform. It's comprised primarily of a bunch of loosely coupled open source projects that are community-led. All of them are united with the umbrella mission to build the de facto standard open distributed operating system for the data center. In layman terms, to explain what it is, it's the easiest way to basically draw the parallel between OpenStack and Amazon Web Services. I mentioned various projects inside the OpenStack kind of a community. You can map most of these projects to an equivalent service by AWS. So Nova is a compute orchestration project in OpenStack that is effectively functionality-wise similar to EC2. Cinder is like Amazon Elastic Block Storage. Swift is object storage, compatible with Amazon S3, and so on. So this slide is actually pretty old. One of the amazing things about OpenStack is the engineering velocity of the community. So the number of projects and consequently the number of services that comprise the so-called integrated OpenStack release today is substantially longer than was depicted on this slide. So I wanted to spend a few minutes to talk about kind of the reason why OpenStack has become so popular and why so many of you are effectively raising your hands. So there's a common parallel that people draw saying that OpenStack is the Android of the cloud. And this pretty much, this does not necessarily explain what OpenStack is from the kind of a software standpoint, but it does explain why OpenStack has become so popular so quickly. To think about it, you can think about a similar phenomenon that happened with Apple launching iPhone. So when Apple launched iPhone, what happened, Google got really spooked because they understood that the future of computing is in mobile. And they also understood that guys like Samsung and Motorola knew nothing about building mobile operating systems when Apple, with their iOS, basically swept the market. So Google said, holy shit, we're going to be irrelevant if Apple is going to control all of mobile. We need to kind of deregulate the mobile market. So they pushed out Android. They got a bunch of guys like Motorola and Samsung on board to accelerate Android development. And bam, today Android is more than 75% of all mobile devices. OpenStack is pretty much the same thing, only instead of Google responding to Apple's launch of iPhone, this is largely fueled by initially Rackspace trying to preclude Amazon from dominating the market. So Rackspace has been around for a while as a managed hosting provider. Then Amazon launched AWS. They grew very quickly, and it was very scary to a lot of organizations in the infrastructure space. So basically, what happened is Rackspace kind of pulled together all of the big guys like HP and Dell and Cisco that knew very little about actually building and operating cloud environments. And they created an open source community that has become OpenStack. And all of these big guys have through enormous amounts of resources, enormous amounts of money in terms of marketing, just press releases to create a lot of hype around OpenStack. And that hype consequently led to a very large community of developers kind of gathering together to build what now has become OpenStack. So why is OpenStack important? There's a lot of cloud orchestration solutions out there. There is solutions from proprietary vendors. There's many open source alternatives to OpenStack, like Eucalyptus or OpenNebula or CloudStack from Citrix. What's peculiar about OpenStack? So the most peculiar thing about OpenStack, like I said, is the amount of hype and the amount of engineering velocity that was unleashed in a very short order. So this is a Google Trends graph showing OpenStack and comparing it to the other open source alternatives. CloudStack, Eucalyptus, OpenNebula all existed before OpenStack was originally founded. Once OpenStack was launched, it just took over the market completely, making any other open source option in the cloud orchestration space pretty much irrelevant. Now, what's interesting is that if you look at OpenStack popularity following kind of a similar way to analyze things using Google Trends against things like vSphere and vCloud, OpenStack is actually quickly catching up to vSphere, at least in terms of hype. So what's really the big deal? Why do we believe that OpenStack is disruptive? And by the way, by we are Mirantis. I'll tell you a little bit more about who we are later. What's the big deal? So I wanted to kind of pause on this and explain how we see the parallels with what was been happening back in the day with Linux. So if you look at how originally computing was adopted in the enterprise, it all started with the mainframe. And the mainframe was a very easy way to introduce computing to the enterprise because it's just basically a box. Everything is pre-integrated. Everything works together. There is a lot of architectural opinion when it comes to a mainframe, but it's an easy-to-consume kind of thing. So you sell it to the enterprise, and guys like HP and IBM started pushing that into the enterprise, all pre-integrated, all proprietary, and that basically seeded the notion of enterprise computing. And enterprise understood that computing can create a lot of benefit, and the market started growing, and the whole ecosystem of organizations and the whole ecosystem of innovations started spurring out of this new kind of enterprise computing market. So what started happening is the market started to go through a stage of disaggregation between basically the control plane for all the hardware innovations that were happening and the hardware itself. So it's an OS hardware disaggregation stage. x86 ecosystem came about, and then Microsoft came about as this glue that enabled you to glue together all of the innovations in hardware that were happening in CPU, in memory, etc., into one kind of a cohesive fabric. And then Linux followed Microsoft. So what's happening today is a very similar situation, only today we are seeing disaggregation that is happening at a slightly different level. So we saw the world now moving kind of from the notion of computing that is focused on just a single node computing to the notion of computing that is based on distributed kind of paradigm. And companies like VMware and then consequently Amazon helped fuel kind of this adoption by the enterprise of distributed computing. I think Amazon is a good example to just look at because it's very specific. So Amazon basically built a large distributed data center. They overlaid their proprietary operating system on top of it, and they just wedged themselves into the enterprise world. And very quickly, everybody understood that this, data center-wide operating system is the way to go. There's a lot of benefits to, instead of having many silos, have a single fabric that glues together all of the components of a data center and exposes all of the services of a data center for a single set of APIs to the end user. And then what ultimately started happening is the market, the cloud computing, the infrastructure cloud computing market started to grow, much like we saw the just traditional computing market grow. Just the cloud computing at the infrastructure level started growing and disaggregating. And today we see a lot of startups popping up that are basically bringing the different innovations from the kind of the next generation infrastructure cloud world to the enterprise. So there's startups that say, we'll help you do networking the Amazon way, or we'll help you do storage the Google way, etc. So there's an enormous amount of innovation that's happening. And as this innovation is happening and enterprises are starting to adopt things like software-defined networking or distributed commodity storage, you need a fabric that can glue all of these innovations together in a single cohesive format consumable by the end user. And OpenStack effectively today is emerging as this fabric. And the growth trends that I have showed you before speak to the fact that it has today a breakaway momentum among all of the alternatives. So it's really kind of emerging to become the Linux of the data center, the true operating system for the distributed data center of the future. Hence all the hype about it. And it's exactly because of that, all of the infrastructure players today are kind of grasping to the OpenStack train and figuring out what their OpenStack strategy is. Either they have their own OpenStack distribution, or there may be a player that offers some infrastructure component that plugs into OpenStack. Either way, pretty much every single organization in the infrastructure world today has some positioning around the OpenStack phenomenon. So this is, again, speaking to the example before. Mainframes still exist in the data center today, but unlike in 2000, even the mainframes today largely run Linux. So following this concept of OpenStack being the Linux of the data center, you can kind of predict where we believe it's going. So this is another interesting slide. So I don't know if any of you know Adrian Cockcroft. Adrian Cockcroft is this very prominent kind of thought visionary, early adopter of Amazon Web Services. Not at the developer kind of side, but he basically is a guy that helped Netflix move a substantial chunk of their infrastructure onto Amazon, and he's this hardcore proponent of Amazon. And I remember when OpenStack just was launched, I think it was around 2010 or maybe early 2011, we had a meetup, a developer meetup with just beer and pizza, talking about OpenStack, and Adrian Cockcroft was there. Like, I'm the guy that is all Amazon. I brought over Netflix to Amazon, and he wrote a blog after this meetup, and he said that some of the proponents of OpenStack argue that because it's an open source community project, it will win in the end. I disagree, and he went on kind of a long, kind of two-page spiel about why OpenStack will never work. Now, fast forward to 2014, GigaOM conference, again in Silicon Valley, Adrian Cockcroft keynoting. So this is coming out of his mouth. The marketing war for CIO mindshare has been won. They will buy anything as long as it's called OpenStack. There's too much vested interest in OpenStack. So that's kind of an interesting contrast that I like to show. So what's unique about OpenStack? OpenStack Foundation does a survey across many dimensions, how OpenStack is used, what components plug into it, etc. And one of the survey questions is the business drivers for OpenStack adoption. And consistently, they've done the survey, I think, 2 or 3 times now. Among the top 5 business drivers for OpenStack adoption is the flexibility of underlying components. And this is a very important and unique aspect, and I'll explain why. I mean, if you look at things like cost savings and open platform, operational efficiency, agility, blah, 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 that's just standard cloud stuff. But this number 4, flexibility of underlying components, is unique to OpenStack and at the same time is very important. So if you look at most organizations today, large organizations, they tend to adopt a lot of different stuff at the infrastructure level. And that's normal because infrastructure is a very fast-moving and innovative space. A lot of new things are popping up. A lot of organizations kind of selling their stuff to the enterprises. So if you look at a typical enterprise, they have many different things. They have VMware, they have some Xen, they have some Red Hat and KVM, they have a bunch of stuff on storage side, a bunch of stuff on networking side. If you look at pretty much any large enterprise today, every single one of them has some sort of initiative. Typically, it's a large services project to glue all that crap together into some cohesive fabric to minimize the silos between these different infrastructure components. The problem for it is because all of these discrete vendors innovating kind of at their own pace and developing their own features. So every single one of them has its own API interface, and it's really kind of a pain. So if you work with, for example, NetApp, NetApp has its own API. If you build application to write to NetApp storage, then it's kind of hard to make this application work with something new like SolidFire. And it's just a pain. So the kind of core value that OpenStack ultimately brings is this pluggable model that enables you to take all the different things that have been around a long time, as well as the newer innovative things. All of these vendors that have embraced OpenStack, they write drivers, kind of wrappers, around their specific solutions, and then they plug them into OpenStack, and OpenStack in return exposes a consistent single set of APIs for end users and applications running on top of it to consume. So what you get is you get all of the innovation in the infrastructure space at the core and complete freedom from any lock-in with an open and standard fabric at the edge for your developers and applications to interact with. So this is again going back to the OpenStack Foundation survey. Some of the things about how OpenStack is used today. So business drivers, this is less interesting. More interesting is this. Again, this is, I think it's not as important specifically what all of these things here are, but what's important is simply how many of them are. The extent of variability and extent of kind of diversity of infrastructure that you see in the data center today is vast. And if you look at the OpenStack adopters, they've all embraced this concept of flexibility of underlying components. So let's talk about OpenStack for service providers and managed service providers, since I presume you guys are service providers. So this is a graph that I've shown, I think, about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that displays the adoption patterns of OpenStack across different industry segments. And when OpenStack was first launched, it was largely just a vendor fest. A lot of vendors. All of our customers were vendors, companies like Cisco and NetApp and EMC coming to us saying, help us write a driver, help us deploy POC cloud. Now, the stage that we've largely are in today is this stage right here. And this is a stage where OpenStack is being adopted very heavily by various service providers and internet application vendors. So I won't talk about these guys here, but this is directly relevant to you. If you look at OpenStack today, and the different organizations using OpenStack today, there's a very large number of different service providers that are using it. So, and naturally, Rackspace, managed service provider that has moved their cloud onto OpenStack. AT&T is a customer of ours. They have 7 different OpenStack clouds, both internally and externally facing. Orange has a big push to adopt it. Comcast has it. HP Cloud is based on OpenStack, and many, many others. So why the fuss? Why do service providers care? Why are they adopting OpenStack? Well, going back to the story with Amazon, Amazon's growth and the whole notion of delivering basically an automated infrastructure as a service data center is very disruptive. And this is kind of a good quote by Werner Vogels that shows how quickly this is growing. So each day today, AWS adds enough computing muscle to power the whole Amazon.com of the year 2000. So this just kind of is an illustration of how quickly this market is growing. And Amazon's grabbing it very quickly, but the market's huge. So any service provider has the opportunity to play in it and must play in it if you want to survive long term. So why do service providers love OpenStack? I mentioned it's an API standard and associated brand. So OpenStack has a lot of marketing hype around it. There's a lot of mind share behind OpenStack. Being an OpenStack service provider kind of gives you certain credibility. But more importantly, it's the API standard that has been embraced by many developers. It's all Apache 2 licensed, and it has a very large vendor ecosystem. So the large vendor ecosystem means that you can plug in different components underneath and build your cloud offering however you want. It also means that you have very good cost control. It's not free. It can be expensive if you don't know what you're doing. But what it means is that you are not locking yourself into a single vendor. And this broad vendor support is important because I think that the really compelling part is this right here. If you're a managed service provider and you're selling to the business or even to the end user, you want to be able to differentiate your offering. And the only way to differentiate your offering is through the components, the infrastructure components that you actually leverage to build your data center. And out of any open fabric, OpenStack is the one that supports the most of them. So this is an interesting point that I wanted to discuss, very relevant to the service providers. And I think that in moving towards kind of the cloud route, you have to make some important decisions. You have to make a decision whether you're going after the enterprise or you're going after the commodity market. So commodity market is what Amazon and Rackspace are going after. Enterprise is what most traditional managed service providers are going after. So what are some of the key differences? From the physical infrastructure standpoint, little differentiation in commodity. The differentiation is about cost. So typically, the software is either something you build yourself or it's open source. Hardware is white label, cheap servers. The way you go to market is very important because you have to understand who is your target audience. Either your target audience is the developer, and you're actually building something to be consumed by the applications, and you're kind of wedging yourself into the market in a grassroots fashion. Or alternatively, if you're an enterprise, then your target buyer is VP of operations in the enterprise, and it's a completely different story. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because we've actually helped a number of service providers start their cloud journey. And what we've noticed is a lot of them don't get it. So in fact, one of the first ones that we've worked with was a company called Internap. They're based out of Santa Clara. And they were a little bit confused about this whole situation. So they're a traditional managed service provider, but their vision was that we'll build an OpenStack cloud and we'll sell it to the developers. The problem is that if you're selling to the developers, you're basically going after like a consumer market. That means an enormous amount of marketing resources have to be spent to even establish any sort of credibility. So going back to this picture, managed service providers are typically pretty good at catering to the enterprise and are pretty bad at selling to the developers and building out the commodity offering. Incidentally, OpenStack is OK for commodity. Rackspace was able to kind of hack their flavor of OpenStack Cloud specifically for the commodity market. But for the most part, it's the enterprise that OpenStack is ideal for. Because as a managed service provider, you can cater to enterprises' kind of niche needs with respect to the type of physical data center infrastructure that they want glued together by OpenStack. So this is kind of a long narrative about OpenStack. Now, just a few words about Mirantis and who we are. So we are the #1 pure-play OpenStack company. We are the kind of largest fish in the pond. We have 550 people across multiple locations. We're headquartered in the US, but we're also here, as well as in Asia. We are one of the OpenStack pioneers. We've been doing that since the project was launched. Top contributor to the OpenStack upstream code base. And the most important thing about us is this pure play notion. Why this is important is because a lot of the companies that play in the OpenStack market today, like, for instance, HP or Cisco or Red Hat, that are not pure play. What we're doing is they're using OpenStack effectively as a wrapper around their existing set of products. So Red Hat specifically, RHEL, KVM, ideally OpenShift, OpenStack wedged in there, and it's this integrated kind of a Red Hat stack that they deliver. HP, everything HP, all the way down to the bare metal, wrapped into OpenStack, that's your offering. The problem with that is that it fails to capitalize on a very core value of what OpenStack was designed for, which is being able to take advantage of all the different components. If you're adopting OpenStack, you don't necessarily only want to run KVM. In fact, VMware is a very good partner of ours, and a lot of the customers that we're working with, they start out running OpenStack on top of their VMware infrastructure with the ultimate goal to potentially introduce other components, maybe KVM, and be able to control their KVM to ESX hypervisor mix with minimal disruption to the end tenant. So what exactly do we do, or what do we sell? We sell 3 things. We have an OpenStack distribution. The distribution is Apache 2.3. You can go to our website, you can download it, you can install it, you can run it yourself. We have actually many instances where customers just running our distribution never came to us. But if you're moving towards production, you may want to have access to the continuous stream of patches and fixes. And you may want to have an SLA-backed support. So that's what subscription gives you. OpenStack training and certification. We have public and private classes hosted regularly, including here. And finally, consulting and implementation services around OpenStack. So a few things about our distribution. I think that the most important and interesting thing about distribution is how easy it is to adopt. At the same time, it gives you the choice to take advantage of the different flavors and configurations that OpenStack provides you with. So kind of the tip of the spear of our distribution is something called Fuel, which is also an open source project. It's an OpenStack installer. It enables you to install different configurations of OpenStack, even connect your OpenStack to a vSphere environment in a very intuitive and simple way. You literally just download our distribution. You go through kind of a Microsoft-like wizard where you go, click for 5 screens. You choose your hypervisor. You connect to VMware environment if you want. You choose your storage fabric, deployment topology, click the button. It gets deployed onto your infrastructure in the data center. All of the nodes and all of the networking get discovered automatically. So we have substantial traction for our distribution. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about is our training. So we are the #1 company in OpenStack training certification. Trained thousands of organizations over the course of the last 2 years. And like I said, we have training here. And finally, it's also important to mention that we have the largest services bench for OpenStack. And today, we've just recently announced our partnership with Arrow. So pretty much everything that we sell is available through Arrow.